I'm Peter Lee, and this is Newsbud's China Watch. This week, ICBM madness in North Korea, and China's Mission Impossible. War. It's just a shot away. If North Korea test fires an ICBM, the United States will attack North Korea. That's the message the Trump administration has been sending to Kim Jong-un with the help of China. First, let's take a look at this bad boy. Not Kim Jong-un, the North Korean ICBM, or ICBM-esque thing which North Korea paraded in Pyongyang this weekend, which the Western press wants you to call Franken-missile. April 15 was the Day of the Sun in the DPRK, the 105th anniversary of the birth of North Korea's founding leader and father and grandfather, Kim Il-sung. It's the DPRK's main holiday and the occasion for a gigantic parade through Kim Il-sung Square in downtown Pyongyang. There were some large missile things paraded, which occasioned great excitement among military analysts because they apparently showed that North Korea has some big, solid-fueled, and mobile missiles. Big means an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, which is exciting to us because the continent in question is our continent, North America. Solid fuel means can be launched quickly, without a lot of prep time for the U.S. maybe to detect fueling activity like we used to be able to do with older liquid-fueled rockets, so we could maybe launch a preemptive strike. Mobile means even if we found them once, that doesn't mean we know where they are now, because they move around. Makes the preemptive strike even harder. I tend to doubt the North Korean government actually drives a real ICBM, which even without a warhead is basically a gigantic bomb filled with tons of rocket propellant, through a square crowded with hundreds of thousands of people, past a reviewing stand packed with most of the party's state military leadership, and on live TV. So maybe what we were seeing was a mock-up. We won't know how far North Korea has actually gotten with its development work until they launch one. And they might never do that, because it looks like the Trump administration has drawn a real red line on ICBMs. The U.S. position on North Korea's ICBM program is summarized by a famous Donald Trump tweet from January. North Korea just stated that it is in the final stages of developing a nuclear weapon capable of reaching parts of the U.S. It won't happen. This is not just Trump blowharding. The North Korean ICBM program is a major concern for U.S. strategists, and now it is apparently a formal red line for U.S. security policy. British defense officials signaled to the London Times that the U.S. position is preemptive U.S. strike in case of an ICBM launch. An interesting element of U.S. messaging is the continuing assertion that the United States and China are on the same page when it comes to North Korea. Exhibit A, of course, is the Trump Twitter machine. Why would I call China a currency manipulator when they are working with us on the North Korean problem? We will see what happens. And I have great confidence that China will properly deal with North Korea. If they are unable to do so, the U.S., with its allies, will. USA. Exhibit B, that this is U.S. policy and not just Trump fantasy, is Radio Free Europe's report on statements by National Security Advisor H.E. McMaster in Kabul this weekend. According to RFE, McMaster said the consensus, including China, is that this problem is coming to a head, and so it's time for us to undertake all actions we can, short of a military option, to try to resolve this peacefully. It makes perfect sense that Team Xi is telling Team Kim, don't be an idiot, don't test that ICBM. And I think Kim Jong-un is taking U.S. and Chinese messaging on the ICBM seriously, especially after the Syria strike, especially since the ability to strike South Korea and Japan, including U.S. military bases in South Korea and Japan, with short and medium-range missiles already gives Kim plenty of strategic juice. As to the rest of the messaging, it gets a little complicated. On April 14th, the Associated Press ran a long-awaited backgrounder from the Trump administration describing what it has planned for North Korea. According to the article, what Trump has planned is not much. They call it maximum pressure and engagement. I call it blah, blah, blah. The article concluded with this rather puzzling statement. A U.S. military official, who requested anonymity to discuss planning, said the U.S. doesn't intend to use military force against North Korea in response to either a nuclear test or a missile launch. Say it with me. No use of military force? What the actual F? Especially when you look at what's actually going on. In addition to rhetoric and demonstration projects like the cruise missile attack on Syria and the Moab drop on Afghanistan, the United States redirected the carrier task force led by the USS Carl Vinson from planned operations in Australia to proceed to Korean waters. The Vinson itself carries somewhere around 50 fighter planes that can be armed with a few hundred air-to-surface missiles. The destroyers and cruiser in the strike group can launch 200 guided missiles at once. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has reportedly approved plans for several Japanese destroyers and their missiles to join the Vinson strike group. If South Korea's Yonhap news agency is to be believed, 2 more aircraft carriers, the Ronald Reagan and the Nimitz, will also join the Vinson. And on April 12th, the U.S. Air Force conducted and publicized what's called an elephant walk at its main Japanese base at Kadena, where it's got about 36 fighter planes. An elephant walk is a display of military power where full squadrons are arrayed in tight formation on the runway, sort of like Kim Jong-un's parade, except it's not showing off what might be missile canisters filled with sand. The planes are armed with real bombs and missiles, and it's meant to demonstrate a resolve and capacity to launch a massive high-tempo attack right away. Somebody told the London Times that Trump's military team was confident it could hit everything it wanted to in North Korea in a first strike. Quote, "They think they've got the capabilities to target things and utterly destroy them. They are confident they know where everything is and can target it efficiently." Certainly looks like military force is on the menu, maybe in the pretty near future, since the U.S. probably isn't interested in keeping the Vinson carrier strike group floating off Korea indefinitely. The messaging in the London Times was, Trump's team wants North Korea resolved in a month. But at the same time as all this, the Trump administration gives a backgrounder to the Associated Press that basically tells North Korea, you want to set off a nuke? Test a missile? Go ahead. We're not going to do anything. And that's what North Korea did. On the day after the big parade, the DPRK apparently conducted a failed test of a submarine missile. And beyond a terse statement by Secretary of Defense Mattis, the U.S. said almost nothing and did absolutely nothing. It looks like as long as North Korea doesn't test an ICBM, it's pretty much in the clear. And maybe that's what the North Korean squib was actually meant to confirm. The simplest explanation for the no-attack talk is that the United States was reassuring South Korea, which is threatened with massive North Korean retaliation in the case of a U.S. strike. Vice President Mike Pence visited Seoul on April 17th, and maybe Trump also thought enough of his vice president not to send him into a war zone. Maybe. More to the point, the South Korean government is demanding a voice in any U.S. decision to attack North Korea, and I think the U.S. is saying, well, okay, except for that ICBM thing that directly threatens the United States. Another element, I expect, was China. I expect Trump has promised Xi Jinping that the U.S. won't escalate things on the North Korean peninsula, for the time being, in order to give China time to work its magic with North Korea. Unless, of course, for that ICBM thing. Red line, you know. The interesting question is, Assuming North Korea backs off from ICBM development, what then? Mike Pence made with some more tough talk when he visited the Korean demilitarized zone on April 17th. According to AP, the era of strategic patience is over, and the U.S. and its allies will achieve its objectives through peaceable means or ultimately by whatever means are necessary to protect South Korea and stabilize the region. That's going to be tough, because going back to that AP backgrounder, the U.S. objectives are, quote, North Korea's denuclearization. It cannot lead to an arms control agreement or reduction of the North's atomic arsenal that would imply American acceptance of North Korea as a nuclear power. It's very hard to believe North Korea will voluntarily denuclearize, not after what we did to Gaddafi. In case you've forgotten what we did to Gaddafi, we murdered him after he gave up his weapons of mass destruction. Or, as Hillary Clinton put it,
yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Never say never, but I'm not optimistic North Korea is going to give up its nukes. And that makes me wonder if Trump has partnered with Xi Jinping on North Korea so China can serve as the fall guy. In other words, take the blame if denuclearization talks with North Korea stall or fail. Chinese diplomats have announced a strategy for resolving tensions. It doesn't sound that great. It's called suspension for suspension. DPRK suspends tests, and the U.S. and the ROK suspend military exercises. Well, as an analyst put it in a Global Times report, the proposal would work if both the United States and the DPRK were willing to do it. So, the success of the Chinese approach relies on both North Korea and the U.S. doing what China wants them to do. I'm guessing China's State Councilor Yang Jiechi, the guy reportedly behind this brainwave, didn't read that chapter in Art of the Deal titled Leverage, Lack of. As a matter of fact, judging by the tone of an April 16th op-ed in China's Global Times, it seems as if China has already prepared itself for North Korea proceeding with a much-anticipated sixth nuclear test on top of the failed missile test. So much for suspension. The bigger problem for China is that North Korea hates China. It deals with China not because it wants to, but because it has to. With good reason, North Korea believes that its security and its future depend upon direct and positive engagement with the United States, not through China. I think North Korea wants a deal like Burma got, normalization of U.S. relations without regime change in return for turning away from China. I think Kim Jong-un had already signaled his interest in the U.S. track when he executed his uncle, who handled engagement with China in 2013. But the Obama administration simply wasn't interested. The nukes got in the way. In my opinion, therefore, China's on Mission Impossible. It's supposed to use an impossible strategy to get an impossible concession from North Korea, a government that doesn't even want to deal with China in the first place. The United States, which has engaged clandestinely with North Korea for decades, presumably knows this. Maybe China's being set up to fail, so the Trump administration can check the boxes for give peace a chance, diplomacy, and China, prove you're a real superpower, and China can't complain, I gave them a shot, and North Korea didn't denuclearize, don't blame me, blame China. If China doesn't deliver, I could see the U.S. and its allies promoting the narrative that China lacks the will and capacity to act as a true Asian superpower. Could anyone say, paper tiger? It will be hard for China to deliver great things on North Korea. Maybe all that will come out of this is genuine, mutually accepted red lines on ICBM development and testing, and mechanisms for continual U.S., North Korean, and Chinese engagement. That's better than nothing, to me, anyway. As you can tell from this discussion, North Korea's a complicated situation with a lot of backstory, like a lot of things in Asia. So I'm introducing Asia Brief, available exclusively to Newsbud community members, where I'll be talking about the vital context and background on important Asian issues. Look for it at newsbud.com. Finally, this year a lot of foreigners like me wanted to watch the big North Korean parade to see what new missiles Kim Jong-un was going to display. Well, we got to watch the parade, but only via a Periscope feed from Washington Post reporter Anna Fifield, since she was holding up her cell phone in front of a live stream on her laptop in Tokyo. It's illegal to broadcast these events in South Korea, and in the rest of the world, YouTube had cut off the North Korean news agency's feed. According to the BBC, YouTube probably couldn't show the feed because the North Korean news agency might profit off the ads, which would violate sanctions. This is BS, and the BBC should know better. YouTube has been pulling content related to North Korea put up by third parties as well as the Korean news agency for months, possibly in retaliation for North Korea officially banning YouTube inside North Korea as of April 1st, 2016. Is YouTube protecting us from fake news, or is it protecting its real corporate interests? You decide. Or maybe Google, which owns YouTube, will decide for us. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to newsbud.com, where you'll find exclusive content available only to the Newsbud community and the opportunity to interact with me on the China Watch show pages. See you there. I'm Peter Lee for Newsbud's China Watch.
This is a special announcement. Newsbud is proud to offer something you won't find on other news sites. Welcome to Newsbud Academy. For the first time, Newsbud is offering online courses brought to you by the top experts in their field. The first course offered by Newsbud Academy is the Foundation of Anglo-American and Russian Geopolitics, hosted by Professor Philip Kovacevic. Professor Philip Kovacevic has taught all over the globe. He has been invited to lecture throughout the US, Europe, and the former Soviet Union. Professor Kovacevic currently teaches at the University of San Francisco. The first Newsbud Academy will be offered on the weekend of Saturday, June 10th and Sunday, June 11th, but the enrollment period starts now. Registration is limited for the Newsbud Academy, so go to newsbud.com for more information and sign up today.